Good evening, everybody. Welcome to ReGen Ag Chat 20. It's a continuation of the Making My Farm Resilient thing, this is it now. We've done 3 of 3, and the focus for this evening is tall grass grazing systems, but we'll come back to that in a second. So, Nick, what have you been doing in the last couple of months? Since our last chat. We have chatted, obviously, but
we have chatted. I have been mainly, I've done lots of hedge planting in the last, well, before it got cold, we managed to probably get, I don't know, a kilometre of hedges in. We've got more to do. The cows, this cold weather is amazing for the cows. They were going to come in on the 2nd of December and they're still out. We're just rolling bales out for them. And the other thing, well, I've done quite a few meetings and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, but you and I both went to the Nicole Masters thing at Althorpe, Princess Diana's house. And we were slightly blown away by that. I think for anyone who was there, she is just something else, amazing communicator. Met a few other people. Josiah Meldrum stood out. Andy Cato is very tall. And yeah, no, it was just
very good. He wasn't just tall, he was also
he was very good. He was very good, incredibly tall. It made you look small. But the thing, going back to the farmer meetings, what I've realized is we're a little bit in this kind of bubble of regen stuff, but I did a discussion group for some hill farmers, and when I said to them, does anyone use electric fences, they looked at me like I was some kind of person from outer space. So while this is quite normal in our bubble, there's still a lot of people that are not into this at all. But going from another thing I went to, there's lots of people who are thinking, flipping it, we need to do something different and we need to start thinking differently. And for them, I think it's, where'd you start? Like we've kind of been doing it a while now, but where'd you start? And that can be quite daunting. But anyway, that's what I've been doing, Liz. But I'm looking forward to this tonight.
Yeah, and I suppose I'm halfway through my holistic management training, so that's exciting. So I should be able to answer some of those questions indeed. And as Nicole Mester says, I'm regenerating myself because I've been to an osteopath because I've really hurt my shoulder. So that's what I've also been doing. So I feel a lot better. So
people who will know you from the past, Liz, will find it mildly entertaining that you're on a holistic course.
As a you, thank you before we start winding me up. But I think for me, it's about thinking slightly wider. And because I've done I'm really interested in farming systems. It's a continuation of that sort of idea of thinking like of the interconnections. But it takes on a couple of more steps. So yeah, my plan over Christmas is to do my homework ready for the one in January. Right. And what we should need to remember is that we're carbon calling the conference is coming back next year. We're just in the process of having a chat to Jamie Alexondo, that I can never say his name, Fishhead Man, if you're familiar with that one. We did a chat with him a while ago. So hopefully he's going to come across. So we're just going to have a chat with him this week, aren't we, to plan that?
Yeah, and just on that, so one of the meetings I did was 3 farmers talking to farmers, and I found some fresh regen blood. So if anyone on the call knows anyone who's quietly doing stuff and not really, no one's found them, let us know, because the chap we found from, I don't know if he's on the call or not actually, but the chap we found from, he lives in Hexham. So he was amazing. So if anyone's up that way, wants to go and see someone, get in touch, because I can give you his details, because he was really good. Mixed farm, arable, beef, sheep.
Yeah, and hopefully getting him on a chat
speaker. Yeah, and also a carbon calling. But yeah, so if anyone knows anyone for carbon calling or a chat, get in touch.
Ideal. So we shall start this evening. So we've got 3 people on this evening, and just really talking through their experiences of tall grass grazing. I've met Emily a couple of times, and I've known Fergus and David for a while. They'll probably tell you how we first met in a slight combative situation, a discussion group. But first up really is Emily. So I don't know whether, Emily, you want to share your slides and just take us through a bit of background of what you're up to, and particularly in relevance or reference, sorry, to your Nuffield that you're currently doing.
Yeah, no worries. Hi guys, I'm gonna share my screen. I think. There we are. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
So I was lucky enough to be awarded a Nuffield Scholarship 2022, and my subject is mob-grazed flerd, improving soil biodiversity and farm incomes. I'll just clarify the word flerd. Those of you probably know all about it, but basically it's a cross between a flock and a herd. So we are majority sheep, with 60 head of cattle, and we've also got some goats, which I will go on to explain further as my presentation goes on. I'm very generously supported by the Elizabeth Creek Charitable Trust, who sponsors me for my Nuffield. So I'm halfway through currently. Yeah. So this is a few pictures from our farm. A nice soil pit there. The goats behind electric fencing there, because you need electric fencing for goats. Some of our sheep and lambs and our cattle in a hurdle lane. So my partner, this is the farm. As you'll notice, that was on the right hand side, that's a set stocked picture from 3 years ago. So don't judge me for the set stocking. So I met my partner 12 years ago. I was working for Farmers Weekly at the time, and I sort of got involved, helped him lambing and stuff like that. And in fact, we got engaged at the weekend, just this weekend on Saturday night, which was really exciting. Anyway, so it was a family farm. Traditionally, two farms came together. One was a dairy farm, one was cattle and sheep. And there was a very, it was very mixed, arable, sheep, beef, dairy. And then his father died when he was 15, so he carried that on. Got pretty intensive at one point. I think it was 1,200 ewes and sort of a couple of hundred cattle, arable, a lot of fertilizer going on. And then he decided to specialise in sheep, and we were quite an intensive sheep farm, indoor mules, pushing for averages, all indoor lambing, and that's how it's been for the last 20 or so years. And slowly, well, for the last 12 years, we've had Cheviots with the mules as well, and they had our own replacements and stuff like that. But the arable, obviously, as kits got more expensive, and that sort of thing, we did rent out the arable, and then we took it in hand back 5 years ago and put it in stewardship schemes. We're on heavy clay, so a lot of our grassland is permanent pasture, and we started calf rearing probably about 6 or 7 years ago. Well, I went to market and bought 5 calves, and then we had to do something with them, so we decided to go a bit bigger into that. And yeah, so that's the background to the farm. Spring 2021, I read For the Love of Soil. In fact, I listened to it while we were lambing, and the early lambing bunch, we had joint ill problems. So what I was doing was injecting everything at birth with a mil of antibiotic, and then thinking, oh, I better put prebiotic back into them to get their gut bacteria working. And I was kind of going around in circles trying to solve problems, like a sticking plaster, really. And reading Nicole Masters' book, I just realised that fundamentally something was wrong and the system had to change. And actually Mark, my partner, was really on board with it, and we got really excited about going down the regenerative. I don't like to bang on about that, but I think it's just looking at things from a different point of view, starting from the ground up, the soils, everything like that. we went pretty hard on soil testing. We've got everything we need in our soils. It's just locked up. We've got a very high mag, locked up soils, heavy clay, and we've got everything we need. We just need to unlock it. So that kind of started us. We started to mob things up, all of our sheep, and running everything together. And it's been it's obviously it's only 2 years. So so that on our left, that's the cows, sheep, and goats. And this is an interesting video on the right, and this was only 3 weeks ago. So it's just to show you how much regrowth we've had. This was, I mean, it hasn't had the rest that it should have done, but to the next, because we had we were quite in drought conditions like the rest of us, and so basically, yeah. So this is a picture of this year, and in the middle that will be later on. That will be sort of August time, in the middle there, with the longer grass grazing, and we've got a 6.4 metre topper, which Mark's very proud of, but it hasn't been on the tractor this year. We've been, and our neighbours think, well, how can you fatten sheep on that and everything like that? So it's a whole change in mindset to have that length of grass, and we anticipated having more grass because we were hoping to take on some more land next door, but unfortunately that's in arbitration. So we did want more residue. That was our plan. We should have probably destocked a little bit more to have more under us, but it's difficult, only 2 years in, you're still finding your feet. So we were very pleased this year to have the residue we have done, and it stood us in good stead. Obviously on the right there's it's a herbal ley. So we've kind of reduced our flock, partly because we've lost some land, because Mark's got twin boys and we've set them up with 120 acres with our own, that we envisaged them being excited about ReGen as well, but unfortunately they weren't excited about ReGen. So we decided that we'd keep our farm in hand and do that, and then they could go and do what they wanted, because they're 25, so they need to have something, they need to grow as well. So so that's what we've done on our farm. So we've reduced the size of the flock to 450. About half, just over half, will be North Country mules, because we were North Country mules, and yes, they're not the most low input of sheep, but they seem, well, that Mark loves them, and you can't change everything at once. So we keep our own homebred Cheviot Cross North Country mules. So our flock's made half and half. In 2022, this year was the first time we did serious outdoor lambing with, we were a bit later, middle of March. We would typically be middle Feb, end of Feb. So we have gone a month later. Yeah, basically on the left you've got our indoor system, and on the right you've got our outdoor system this year. So we will probably keep we scan obviously, and we have our trebles and singles. We like to mix it up, so it's that's still a challenge, because obviously our mules do bring that higher lambing percentage. So I think this year we did actually have them in, so we could muddle them up as they were lambing, but as it always works, the singles hold on and the trebles lamb quicker, and then you can't do it. So I think we'll lamb mostly outside again. Well, the trebles and singles. What we've learnt in the last 18 months is infrastructure is pretty key, and having the kit. So that's quite interesting that Nick was saying about people not really knowing about the electric fencing options that are out there. There's such a broad range of electric fencing options and infrastructure that make things so much easier, and it makes the job easier and you more likely to do it. So cattle, I guess if we weren't in such, we're in a TB 6-month leave testing area. If we weren't in such prolifically, we only just went back down with TB on Friday with 1 reactor. I would be tempted to go more into cattle, but the TB thing is a big issue for us. So and so we'll always have sheep, but sheep are a pain in the ass because you can't put them behind one strand of, well, at least our sheep you can't put them. I know a lot of people can, but ours tend to like jumping a lot. So yeah, single strand, it's awesome with cattle, and they really respect it. Sheep not so easy. So as you'll see in the middle, this is quite this is from Powered Pasture, Alex Brewster, and I contacted him early in the spring last year, and we planned our farm. So we split our larger, we're lucky we've got fairly square paddocks. I should have put a map in, but we planned it out into 3-hectare blocks so that we could rotate the flerd round easily with semi-permanent electric fencing with Tara gates in the middle. So it's literally just open the gate and they come through. And then the single strand electric that we use, the reels like everyone uses, that's more for the herbal lays and for subdividing those smaller paddocks. Again, the Kiwi Tech trough, that's revolutionary. And I don't know whether they're in stock again, but I was quite distraught when they were out of stock. But yeah, so there we are. Herbal lays, I know we're talking about tall grass grazing, but that it does play quite a big part in our system, I think. This herbal lays is actually funded by Severn Trent Water. We've just gone back into our countryside stewardship, and so we've replaced some of our environmental crops, so our bird mix and stuff like that, with herbal lays, because with tall grass grazing, I think there is the fattening lambs isn't particularly, it's not as easy, like I think we're going to go on to say later. It's not, you want something more powerful to fatten your lambs, basically, and we finish all our lambs. So so the herbal lays is really our tool for doing that. That's how I see it. I don't know if anyone else thinks that, but basically this year our herbal lays has romped away, and the lucerne and the sandpoint. Interestingly, we can actually, the sandpoint has come up, which is amazing because we're on really heavy clay, like I said. So I've been really pleased with the lucerne and the sandpoint. Strip graze our young cattle on daily moves. They trap, obviously because of TB, we had a lot under them, but I think that actually really benefited because they did a lot of trampling there, and it really built organic matter. And by the time they got to the end of the field, the first bit was really coming up, and it was at a height that the lambs were better on. So I think that worked really well this year. So I hope that's going to do that this year. These are my goats. I've got no more goats now. Yeah, goats don't like British winters, basically. I think that's an understatement. They really like they've got shelter at the moment, but they do melt in the winter and with rain. There's a reason why they're from South Africa. So it's a learning curve. they're due to kid in January. I'll probably bring them in just before Christmas. But they do, interestingly, they do have different grazing characteristics. They don't really like clover, which is great, because obviously then the lambs are left with the clover. And they tend to nibble the seed heads and obviously all the hedges and stuff like that, and they are a bugger to contain. Again, the infrastructure, these solar panel energizers are brilliant. We're very lucky because we're ring fenced, but and I know that it can be a concern for theft on our land, but we're I'm really impressed with them, and they're on the grant, the infrastructure, the farming technology grant as well, so you do get a bit of funding for them, which is good. As I said about my Nuffield, one of the key things was improving biodiversity on our farm, but also having the biodiversity and the animal health that goes hand in hand. We only wormed our lambs once this year, apart from the back end when we started fattening. Again, this year we have actually fattened on cake, which paid. It worked out in terms of the way we did it, but you can't throw the baby out with the dishwasher of the bath water just to a dishwasher. But you have to do the right thing for your business at the time, and I think that's quite crucial. You can't be so dogmatic that you're not going to adapt things to the thing. Sorry if I'm waffling on. I don't know where we are in time. I've got to stop my thing. So my Nuffield this year, I was really lucky to go to Zimbabwe and meet one of my heroes, Allan Savoury. He's quite a scary character. At dinner, he asked what my explanation of holistic management was, and then proceeded to tell me I was completely wrong, despite having done the holistic management course that Liz is currently doing now. So I'd be interested to see what you come up with at the end of your course, Liz, that's for sure. But it was really interesting visiting the African Centre for Holistic Management. The picture on the right is actually, this is at the end of their dry season. So you can see this is in an area that's been rested, and there's quite a lot of greenery, and that watercourse behind the chap that's talking there, that's actually returned since that method of management has been instigated there. So there was some clear benefits in Zimbabwe to this holistic management, and we could see it in terms of the stock. I don't think it was quite where they. I think it's very difficult because there's such different systems. Like comparing our systems with the brittle system, it's very difficult to compare. But we learned a lot, and he's an inspirational guy that's done a lot of good across the world. So it was a real pleasure to meet him. My travels firstly took me to Kansas to the No-Till conference. So I was covering that for a couple of magazines, but I also learned a lot about infiltration, organic matter, cover crops, and also livestock, integrating livestock back into arable, which arable farmers in the UK are just rediscovering livestock, so that's quite fun. In Zim also we visited a couple of dairy operations. This is a bush dairy that's run in a conjunction with a more intensive dairy. So they're trying to improve the veld, which is basically grassland, using holistic management techniques to move their dairy herd and then milk them outside. And that was having clear benefits to improvement in grass varieties and makeup of the actual pasture land. And that was, they were on very little feed, but their yields were obviously comparable, but they, it's a different kind of like here, it's a different concept. Then I went on to Zambia, where there's quite a few guys doing holistic grazing. On the top left, that's actually maize stovers, and those cattle are moved 8 to 9 times a day, which is pretty incredible. So they're using the animal impact to get the disturbance of the soil, then moving them on. And as you can see, you know, these cattle are doing all right. This is their dry time as well, so they only just got rain just the week after we left. So it's really interesting what's happening out there. Portugal again, these guys were doing holistic grazing. It's so different though, because it's obviously also brittle, and their environments and things like that. So we have a much more forgiving environment than these guys. So potentially I'm hoping our stocking densities will be able to increase going forward. In fact, probably the best place for fitting for learning about holistic grazing is Scotland, and on the right up there is Alex Brewster's, and he's actually bringing hill land back into production using strip grazing, and improving pastures considerably, decreasing bracken coverage, increasing species, palatable species. So that's really encouraging. And you can see the dung beetles on the bottom left, and that's where I am. So there we are. I'll stop sharing now. Sorry.
Thanks, Emily. Just a couple of questions that's come up, which is, you mentioned about your partner's sons in terms of they're not interested. Someone has asked why. The $64,000 question.
When I say not interested, they weren't as enthused and excited, and I think there's still quite a mentality of pushing for production, pushing for shapy lands in market. It's not all about the cost of production. It's actually about the price of the animal at the end of it. There's kind of that pressure of numbers, scale. You know, it almost feels sometimes that if you go back in numbers, you destock, you're taking a step back. And actually what we found is that we're improving everything. We're improving the animal health. It's a pleasure to be around the animals. They're not needing as many medicines, they're not needing as many inputs, but you know, still there's that mentality. You've got to be big, you've got to have the biggest pen of land, you've got to have this, you've got to have that. And I think that might be a young man's game. You know, it's numbers, isn't it? Sometimes you have to qualify whether you're a farmer with how many sheep or how many cattle you have and how big you are, and it's a funny mentality, I feel anyway.
And my question to you is, why goats?
because regenerative people have goats, and it's such a bad idea. And Mark reminds me all the time that it's a bad idea, but I do love them quite a lot. But they do, at least when they go to market, they do make quite a lot of money, but it doesn't offset. And now I've got to farm my way out of them. I can't just, unfortunately, I've got to clear my, yeah. So I don't think goats fit our system particularly well. That's what I'm saying.
So were they going to be goats for meat?
Meat goats.
Yeah.
Well, I went after Nicole Masters. I did all Gabe Brown, Joel Salatin. I thought, right, yeah, we're going to stack all our enterprises. I got chickens too. So I was like, right, we're going to have every single enterprise. We're going to do a farm shop. And then you think, yeah, there's only one of me, and there's only 2 of us on the farm, and also we like to live. So it's finding your holistic context, and goats aren't proving
On that currently.
No.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. We'll come back for some general questions after we've heard from David and Fergus. So, David, Fergus, let's go for David first. Can you just give us a bit of background on your farm business? What the standard numbers area? What do you think your business vision is?
see how far I can push the ground, see how far I can improve it.
And how long have you been on that bit of land?
That bit, I moved down here in '96, and my brain was in a completely different place. I was just like Emily said, pushing for numbers, yield, use as much artificial fertilizers as I could, as much maize, and the system failed me basically. And come the turn of the century, I was losing money, I was buying more quota, still getting the same, increased my milk sales, but my costs were going up, and I just decided I had to get out. So I got out of 2002, I saw the herd. I thought, shit, what do I do now? I know, I'll do it all again in New Zealand with a friend. So I went out there for a year, and that's where I really came across rotational grazing. And but what was happening out there at the time was very much similar to what I've been doing here. So pushing for yields, pushing the grass, heavily fertilized. And I thought, and doing twice as much work. And I thought, well, this isn't really sustainable. So I came back home, and I had a break for a couple of years. And then Fergus here and his mates dragged me to the markets and started, go and buy some cows and calves. And need to buy some cows and calves. And I thought, well, all right, I'm going to buy some cows and calves as I can afford, but I'm not going to lose money. So I was understocked at the time, and I bought the cows as I could afford them. And I realized that from my experience in New Zealand, if you rested the grass kept on growing longer and it kept growing stronger. So I just started on a move of just giving them what they needed every day. And I started off with 4 cows on 120 acres, which was easy peasy really. So I grew loads of grass. And I just basically went on like that. And then we discovered, what was it, 2010, 11, I read a book by Graham Harvey. What was the name of it?
Carbon Field.
The Carbon Fields. And it just took me right back. It took me right back to what my great uncle used to say about red clover in the 30s. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, there's maybe something in this. And then we started learning about mycorrhizal fungi, and then we attended one of your meetings in Crittenden where you were desperately trying to get farmers to move the cattle, and I think there was a bit of a fly in your ointment, really. And yeah, and then I just went on. Can you bring the map of the farm up, please?
Yeah. Should be there. Can you see the whole screen?
That's it. Yeah,
That's good.
yeah. In the middle of the picture, you can see a block of land, and you can see it's all different shades. So back in 2010, 2011, I heard somewhere someone had been on a farm walk, and they put corridors in their fields. And I thought, oh, that's a good idea. Why don't I do that? And then what I realized, it cut down the amount of time you needed to set up an electric fence to move your cattle. So you just moved up the corridors, gave them what they needed every day. And if the grass wasn't as good, you could give them more. Or if it was really good, you could give them less. So you could vary the paddock sizes. And at that time, I was working off farm as an electrician, so I didn't have a lot of time. So I gradually set about doing that over the whole farm. And if you look close on the other fields, you can see that's what I've done. And that's when we realized. So that big field in particular, you can see I started, the bare patch I started, and the cows, if you zoom in on that point, that's where the cows are. By the time I finished grazing that big field, I could have started grazing it again. And I thought, well, never seen that before. And so that's what we went down this route. And then we started looking up people on the internet. Neil Dennis, the late Neil Dennis, who was managing 1,000 animals on his own, moving them 8 times a day. And then I read Tom Chapman's Nuffield report, and he'd been to see these characters out in North America, and that's how we got into it. And then all of a sudden, the whole world opened up on YouTube. We met these people. I read about these people, Gabe Brown, Allan, Savoury, and I just couldn't be dragged away from YouTube, really. And we just kept on pushing the cows, moving them every day. And then I saw things like backlatches that were automated. So yeah, the spring gate. Can you bring that photo up with the spring gate with the cattle in the ground?
Yeah.
Fall down.
That should have moved. Can you see it now?
That's it, yeah. Yeah, so that's what it enabled me to do. It enabled me to set up 3 or 4 of these and go to work. And I could come back and then do it all again at night. So I only need to see the cattle twice a day. And that's what I could do in summer. And we started to realise that by doing that, we were improving the ground. So that's what I've kept on doing. And we kept, people used to think I'm mad, but the numbers just kept going up, you know. And at present, I've got 120 acres and I run up to 130 animals. So that photograph this summer is me grazing at easily £1 million, £1 million per hectare, or £1 million an acre. A hectare, yeah. You can see they're packed in so tightly that the calves burst out.
But I suppose the question, which is that's after a long period of dry, isn't it? In terms of you haven't had any rain there for probably 8 weeks.
Yeah, it hasn't rained there. I mean, I don't do that all the time, but what I do I generally do it in July, where conventional farmers, what they do is the grass comes in May, June. And oh, brilliant, we've got all this grass, we've got loads of silage. And what I found, I make as little conservation silage here or whatever, but I'll take some out of the equation and graze it a month later after when I would cut it. Does that make sense? Normally, the conventional thinking is you cut when the grass is at a lovely mature, a lovely leafy stage, and that's when you graze. Sorry, that's when you graze it, and then you leave it for conservation. Whereas I'm doing the opposite. I'm cutting at a normal time, but I don't cut as much, and I leave so much, and I'll leave it till it's got really mature. And by doing that, packing them in tight, the animals only have the chance to get the preferred bite, and the rest is flattened out on the ground. Can you show the next slide where it's?
So that's the recovery, isn't it? That's the photo that's come through. Sorry, that's the same field, but you're after this one.
I'm after the last one, I think, yeah. No, not that one. No.
It should be coming. It's just there's a bit of a delay, I think.
No.
Is it on now?
Well, while that one's on, that is this summer, taken about 2 months after those animals were grazing that ground. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for in June, July time. You can see the width of the corridors. You can't walk through them without touching either an electric fence or an animal or 2 animals. That's what I'm doing. I'm laying that on the ground, and that is protecting the summer, the soil in the summer, stopping it drying out. And you can see the picture to the side. That's the clover coming through after that event. And that is generally when everyone else is burnt up down in the southeast. Because we get some horrendous droughts down here. you've got a budget on a 100-day drought every single year in the southeast, haven't you, firms, really?
Yeah, sometimes you get away with it.
And I mean, this summer we've had to really contend with building two stockpiles, one for the summer, one for the later grazing, which is now. So anyway, so where was that?
And what we could have, and what we should have said right at the beginning is the farm map photo. Sorry,
That's right.
is
Yeah,
that is illustrating the green that your farm was compared
That's
to
right.
other
That's
areas around.
That's a Google Earth picture taken on the 5th of August this year. And you can see there's a similar sized enterprise to the northwest of the photograph. No, that's the sheep. That's a sheep neighbour. That is a small sheep enterprise there. That's the one. Now this guy sets stocks. He produces some of the best Limousin store cattle in Kent, but he's feeding 11 months of the year. And to the right of the picture, we've got a farm twice my size. They carry roughly half my animal units. And ironic, and to the bottom, we've got a guy who's a sheep farmer in Hay Times. You know, but I have to say, since his father died, he's doing a much better job there. But he's still, this is August. There's no real grass other than my place. And
So David, can I just ask, on your farm outlined there, how many acres or hectares is that?
120 acres.
And what do you carry on that?
I carry 50 suckler cows. Their calves, and their previous year's calves.
Okay.
Some odd stores, which takes my numbers up to about 130, give or take. I mean, I have destocked now. I've sold some stores in the market, but I'm not spending any money on them really, other than the active fencing.
And there's no fertilizer or
No
anything.
fertilizer, no wormers, and I've even cut minerals out. I don't buy minerals anymore.
Don't you?
No. And I don't seem to need to get problems. When I first started, my cows would calve and I'd have a calcium bottle at hand, pull the calf out, and I'd go straight into the vein with some of the thinner cows with calcium, because the ground obviously wasn't providing the minerals, even though I was putting them in. Because I think general purpose minerals can antagonize the animals if you've not got the right animals, if you've not got the right mineral composition. I mean, I don't test, but what I'm finding is now the animals are so much healthier. They don't need minerals, which
They do, but they're getting them out of the soil.
they get them out of the soil. Yeah.
Thanks, David. So Ferguson, would you like, I'll just stop sharing this, but in terms of just talking us through what you do, and just remember you might need to come a bit closer to the mic.
Yeah, so very similar background to David. When I was dairying up the road, at the same time I gave up dairying intensive in 2000, and you know, when the BSc and all the rest of it kicked in and then put them out, and so I had enough of that. I was heavily borrowed. I was very heavily borrowed, had to sell land, and went into a bit of a downward thing. I came to help David actually, when he gave up about a year after me. And then he went off to New Zealand, and I didn't do a great deal, but similarly started buying a few more animals. But what really bothered me, I'm getting older a bit now. I actually became a grandfather about 2 hours ago. But I was bothered about the fact that I grew 75 acres of maize, 75 acres of maize on a small farm, continually, and was actually proud of the fact that I could do that for 15 or 12 years in a row, and I've got very much involved with how to grow a crop of maize, you know, using all the chemicals and getting around all the resistant weeds and what have you. So, and the soil was getting knackered. And my dream was, when I decided to go down the ReGen route, and I was very much involved with ICI when I was dairying. And the thing was, 4 tonne of dry matter per acre, 10 tonne a hectare, you know, easy done, and you're considered a good, efficient dairy farmer. But what I didn't really realise at the time that was it was all coming in a blue bag and costing me maybe 8 bags of fertiliser per acre. So anyway, I went down the ReGen route, just like David, started building up, having had 4 or 5 years of, you know, dairying intensively 7 days a week does take its toll. Anyway, we got over that, started buying, and I wanted to sort the soil out. And I can remember, I had the cows out in the field last week, and it was a field that I'd grown maize on probably for, I don't know, 10, 12 years. Then I had to put some grass in, and then put some stubble turnips into some sort of solid clay, it's very clay ground, like a vegan, and it didn't grow. It was in a drought situation. The same soil now, it's got, I would say, the organic matter. I never tested it. I just know from how I farm that organic matter has gone up, I don't know, 4 or 5% probably. And now it's like cottage cheese on the top. The molehills are there. We haven't used fertilizer, no chemicals for years and years and years. And that has been, I just want to leave the farm like that. And so I've been doing things a bit differently today, but I've been concentrating and become obsessed on improving my soil by any means. So I've got a small suckler herd. I bought in dairy calves and reared them. I've only got about 60 acres or 65 acres, which includes a field I use for festivals, which is very unproductive. That's come back in now. And I bought a lot of, I even went into Ashford Market, bought, I don't know, about 25 animals and absolutely smothered the farm with cattle, bought in hay just for this purpose. And I'm now seeing the benefits, and I'm now slowly going back to, I've stopped doing the dairy cows because I don't enjoy it. I'm now certified pasture for life, and I've got a suckler herd, and I'm just going to tinker around for my last 30 years with a small suckler herd. And the big question is, what's the optimum amount of cows on my acreage? I've been running over like David, a cow an acre, but with a small, say 25 suckler cows, I've got the option of keeping the calves for 1 year, 2 years, or fattening them and selling them for pasture for life. And I look at a bullock now and think to myself, well, you can spend, I mean, David's neighbour probably spends about £1,000 on a bullock he sells for 1,100. David will sell a bullock for 900 and spends virtually zero. And to me, they're the ones where the money's been made. And I think I want to sort of go down the David route, i.e. spend no money and probably keep the cattle out. Because the big thing we have to juggle, isn't it, David, is we're very tight in stock. We can't outwinter. And we try, I mean, I was prepared to keep them out until January, and at 4 o'clock last night, with a couple of, I don't know, a few inches of snow. So I decided to bring them in. Grass to go out to. I still got covers for probably another 2 weeks, and then we'll have a short winter. But one of your questions I see, and this is really, really important, and I'm a mentor. I don't know whether people take me seriously or not. I'm a mentor for Pasture for Life, and you're asking how do you get started in this? And what I'm telling people is, and Liz, you were telling us this 10 years ago, the quickest way to increase your profits is to shorten your winter, and that is your starting point. And even if it's only 10 days. And I was on a farm somewhere the other day, whether they were listening or not, explaining to them that if you just say, put your cows into that little bit of conservation, I used to do it, we all shut off this large area, and that is silage, hay, whatever happens. And I was saying, well, put your cows in there, just take 5-10 acres and then turn them out a bit early, and you don't need that hay and straws, hay or silage off that area. And immediately, if those animals are out, they're saving you money. And then you do a little bit at the end. So I started, I can't remember, David, we went from mid-October to, Christmas is a very normal time for housing now. Some years, if it's frosting, we might go into January. But it's looking like turnout, if I keep them in now, will be early because we've got plenty of good recovered grass now. So I'm very much of the opinion that shortening the winter is a starting point. It's a difficult one, but it's not that hard because you only have to do it by, do the maths. I mean, was it a couple of quid a day or whatever? You know, 20 days times your £2 is suddenly quite a lot of money. Multiply it over your herd. But people really struggle with it. And I just think, I'm hoping that I'm mentoring 4 people. I'm hoping one of them, I've got someone in Sussex who I think is going to do that. And I think, Liz, I honestly think that, and I said this to you before, I think we can potentially produce that same 4 tons of dry matter per acre off the farm, and that will be infinitely more successful than what I was doing on dairy, because it's regeneratively, it's sustainable, and it's going only one way, which is up. Because if you have a bad year in regen, you can bet your bottom dollar you have a worse year in doing it the way I used to do it. I mean, we had some horrendous droughts back in the 80s, and there was nothing you could do about it. So, Mike, just quickly before I go, building up and dealing with you're asking about dealing with the drought. The time that, for me, the most important time of the year is, like David said, no photographs. The time you'll be mowing the largest part of your farm, you're grazing it hard, you're trampling it, you're grazing it, and you're moving them on. But the key for that to work on our intensive system here, intensive in terms of numbers, is you've got to have legumes in that. So we've got permanent pasture with a lot of clover. And that extra clover, that more clover than you'd expect, is key to the utilisation of the slightly stemmier grasses. And the more clover, the more they'll graze, but you've got to leave it on the ground. And
but the thing is, folks, what we're doing encourages clover. By stocking densely, the clover plants thrive and the long rest periods. I've been at farmer meetings and people say, oh, I can't grow clover. Clover doesn't grow on my farm. And growing up on my family dairy farm, I never saw a clover plant till July. As soon as we started this system, heavy impact, the clover gets a chance to express itself.
I mean, I went to a meeting once. There's 2 things they talk about. I think I mentioned the year at Frittenden. I think it was Andre Boisson talks about the clover crash, and I can't find that place, but you sometimes get so much clover that it just disappears. Something, I don't know what happens. I don't know whether it's almost like you put nitrogen on it, and then it will just come back. It's there, and none of these things I worry about. I mean, we've got bare patches on the ground now, and I know that there's a seed bank there from those June, July impact moments. I'm still seeing the same species of grass that I planted in that field when I gave up years and years and years ago. The Timothy's coming back, the perennials come back. It's not what everybody wants. We haven't got the diversity. I'm just letting what happens happen, and that's the way.
So you haven't put any more additional seeds in since June,
not
from the dairy days?
Not since the dairy days, but not since I got started. I did my last. I did one reseed. My last reseed was 2013. Prior to that, it was back in 2001.
Neither have reseeded since you were on the farm, Liz.
Okay.
Reseeding
it's
is continual.
true regenerative in terms of seed bank, isn't it? And also encouraging what's there and coming. Okay.
And one other thing, Liz, which is really interesting, we don't hear it enough. I went up to Groundswell on that Saturday and listened to Allan Williams, and what he talks about with bricks measurements really interests me. Both David and myself are doing bricks measurements, and I know a few other people are doing that. And there's an absolute straight line graph between animal performance and bricks levels. And bricks level, you will explain it better than me. It's basically the nutrient density of the plant. But he will talk about, he's talking about on ground that he claims is regenerated from nothing, from growing cotton, of 25. And I can only assume that's
all the year round, so clear.
I think it's because he gets more sunshine out there. but the link between animal performance and bricks, now that is, as he says, and I wouldn't doubt it, there's got to be something that we've really got to be looking at. And a very unpopular thing, and somebody, and I don't want to say who, has told me, and I don't know whether it's true or not, but the, what are those things called, herbal lays, don't get such high bricks levels. I don't know, but the indicator of the reason for high bricks, according to Dr. Allan Williams, is very good quality soil, i.e. deep rooted and drawing up nutrients from below. And that obviously doesn't happen in short-term lays. So I don't know if there's any truth in that, but I'm fascinated by bricks. I really want to know how we can.
He does say that Gabe Brown and him do say from a baseline of 3% bricks, every 1% above that equals 100 grams of live weight gain per day. I don't know whether you've heard that.
Nicole Masters also
I
talked.
think she did.
Yeah, it's
She's really into bricks.
and it well after the obviously the guru of Nicole Masters, I have bought a bricks machine and I'm starting to use it. But at the moment, whether it's the fields or whether I basically there's been no sun since whenever, is that I'm just not getting very high value. So I am doing some measurements on them, but I'm still in that phase of, well, what do I do with it? So, and yeah, we need to do, we just need to do more testing and understand, don't we? Observe
Liz,
more
I'm
of that.
just thinking, has anyone on the call got a bricks meter? Because with our herbal lays, I've noticed that you put cows in there and they prefer the verges that obviously haven't been herbal laid. Is that bricks? Is that because it's
something? I mean,
the soil, isn't it? The soil has not been knackered in the hedgerows.
I mean, herbal lays are. I mean, David and myself speak from a very intensive permanent pasture farm. We haven't got an arable farm to have to look after as well, and I understand the reason for herbal lays. So I'm more interested in to know why, you know, I mean, more interested in how you get these high bricks levels, because at the end of the day, we're trying to get meat out of our forage, and regardless of whether it's herbal lay or whatever. I mean, you tell stories about sometimes the forbs have got higher bricks levels than the what other people consider to be grasses.
Yeah.
And then so that all becomes quite interesting.
There's just a question, David, for you, which is how many hours per day do you spend moving the cattle, setting out fences?
In summer, when I'm doing that really high impact, I might spend 2 hours. Obviously, some of the fields are a bit more awkward. I've got one field by the river, which has an electric fence down the middle. I've got a fence off the river, which is a bit of a pain, and I've got a fence off the ditch. So, but 2 hours, including that is walking to them. It's an awkward farm, so I don't have a quad.
It's infrastructure, isn't it?
The infrastructure.
I mean, talk to Sam. Sam's the master of infrastructure. He's got it all set out, and he reaps the benefits of that. He's got quite a lot of groups.
So that's Sam Newington.
Yeah, you've got your lane set up. I mean, there are people who do 4 days, put four cells up at a time, and just have to go and move them through each day or whatever.
And June, Emily's outlined her watering system. So what do you do for water? David first, then.
I have, if you go back that big field, is that easy enough to do?
Yeah.
Basically, every other corridor, every other line.
Yeah. Oh no, not that one. That one.
Basically, I've moored in a 25mm pipe on by the side of every other fence line.
Yeah.
Yeah. So see where the post is. The line's running perpendicular. Yeah. So that one, the first line on the left, and then the third line. So there's two. That's right. No, miss a line. That's the one. So there's a water line up that fence line, and every 150 meters there's a hydrant. Whether it's, I think there's a pipe and fittings which I don't really like, but just a tap sticking out. And basically that's what I've got on the rest of the farm. So you're never more than 150 metres away from the hydrant.
And use a drag trough.
And I use the drag trough, yeah.
And Fergus, how about you?
I've got a smaller farm. I've got various points, and I am a notorious pointer, so I tend to drag a lot of pipe around. But similarly, I've got points where I can get water pipe to the whole farm, but I've got stopcocks in every field, and I get by. I do little things. And just going back to, sorry, the Kiwi Tech have got, I made a note of this, they've got drag troghs in stock, you're asking, Emily was asking. Well, they did have, I had an email, whether they still got them, but it's worth keeping James Daniel, because they're brilliant. They are absolutely brilliant. And even during the drought, I mean, I was in Scotland during that really hot July, and my kids, it was fine. It kept at that point they had 70 or 60, and it kept them going. They tend not to drink at the same time. You know, if you get the trough into the mob, yeah, I mean, you hardly ever see them drink. I mean, they all drink at different times, and they develop different patterns as well.
They don't see one another going for the water. Whereas when you set stockings or a large cell, they may not go to the trough even though they need it, even though they need a drink until the lead cow goes. And then once the lead cow goes, they all follow her. Under this system, a cow is drunk before anyone else realizes they're drinking water. So it's as and when they need it. They don't have to venture out of the mob to get the water, and it's crucial. That's the advantage of having these systems.
Just another quick thing, we were talking about dry management. I'm lucky, I've got probably more woodland than there is down here, but it became apparent to me in this last year that I've probably got about 20 days of grazing in shaded areas. So one thing I am planning for next year is to fence them off early on in the season. Because I ran out of those shaded areas, but I could have had probably another 10 days this year. This makes a massive difference, obviously. I mean, yeah, they're a bit slow in the spring, but my goodness, I was, you know, when we came out of those shaded areas, things got very tight for a while. So these little things you learn as you go along, and it's very much, you know, and I'm still learning to this day.
But you're utilising existing trees rather than planting additional ones.
Well,
in shade.
I've actually about to embark on a serious tree planting. I'm convinced. You haven't been to the farm yet, my farm, have you? I've got trees in there. I've got some part of trees in them, and I used to think the trees were all unproductive underneath, but I'm anywhere in the area of a tree canopy and bits of trees we got. We always, I'm sure we get more grass, and so I'm planting a lot of trees coming up. It's my little thing to do as a legacy, really. This winter, you know, lots and lots of trees.
Okay.
I think. Sorry.
No, another question just from Peter in terms of how do you manage your bulls? Comes up quite a lot in these sort of systems. So do you pull your bull out, or what do you do with your bull?
I don't. I eye them all.
That solves the bull.
Yeah.
I've got
it enables me to keep one mob. That's, you know, I couldn't do this system if I had more than one mob. The workload would be too high. And you don't get the animal impact with smaller mobs. You know, bigger mob as possible.
So David, how do you wean, or do you not wean?
Don't really wean. The cows eventually kick them off.
And just expand on that. So did that happen? Did you just like flick a switch and that's what you did, or was it a transition?
It was just sort of a transition, really. Yeah. One, in the early days, I was going to the market buying a cow, so they'd be calving all over the bloody town. I do have a relatively compact calving pattern now, but when everything was spread out, it just sort of happened, you know. And I noticed, well, she's starting to bag up. I might have to pull her out, you know.
Okay.
It's very little structure to the way we do it, I'm afraid. It doesn't suit a lot of people. I don't use, I mean, I know a lot of people like to say the courses and charts and things, but I mean, this year has been a classic one where I can't imagine a chart on the wall that would have made any difference, because pretty much since March, everything's gone. I've made decisions almost on the day. Things have happened. I've fed more. I tend to feed hay at different times of the year, so I fed more. When it's dry, the cows go out whenever it is, January, February, March, and there's no grass, you feed them. And if it's wet and there's no grass, you bring them in. And if it's wet and there is grass, you keep moving them. But you just look at the year we've had. We had 10, 12 inches or something in November. We had snow last night. I had a man, I thought I'd set it all up for Christmas. And I've brought him in, and I'm thinking what to do. And the bull was a problem, because he got in with today actually I was sorting him out, and the bloody bull was in for about half an hour, was in the group. I was very nervous for a while. So bulls are a problem, definitely. You've got to find a little corner of the farm with a mate, and but they are a problem.
Thank you. There's a question for Emily as well. There was a question earlier, which is, I'm not sure whether you answered it by typing, but in terms of your lambing date. So there's a couple of queries, because in terms of when you were talking through, you're sticking to quite a conventional lambing date, but trying to do something different. So there was a question about that. And the second question, do you have them all in one group?
Yeah, so we have gone roughly a month later than our conventional kind of February lambing. So that's and we've stuck to that this year, primarily because we still want to be able to finish lambs at the back end of the summer, autumn, or before. We want to get rid of everything before we go into winter. So it's a difficult. We don't want to go into selling stores. That's basically what we don't want, and we don't really overwinter more stock. So that's and we last year we were lucky with the weather, and it was okay. But then we had a drought at the back end. So I think we'll stick. We might go later when the grass is growing, but at the moment I think end of March is more what we were going to do. Yeah, that's what I believed.
In terms of when, because obviously you talked about your flerd, so when does that start from turnout with the ewes and lambs, or you give
so basically we actually lamb all in one block. So all of our we'd scan, so all of our twins are together. Then we kind of drift them out of the scenario, and then we mob up probably 3 or 4 weeks after they've lambed. And then and this year we did that, and it didn't seem to have a detrimental effect by mobbing up quite early. I know some people do mob up later than that. They keep separate groups a bit more, but as soon we this year we seem to have had very even growth from our lambs. A lot of they're very evenly spaced, despite maybe having 4, 5, 6 weeks between lambing. So we drift lamb, if you like. So we have two larger fields, and then if we've had a lot of used lamb, so say 60 or 70 in a day or whatever, then we'll actually move the unlambed ewes to a next door field and keep the lambed ewes, and then mark and ring them, because we are actually ringing and marking. Again, some people don't want to do that, but we're in a position we can, and it worked all right. So then we move them into another paddock, and then we just shift things from one field to the next, and that seemed to work. Then in terms of our cows, I replied, I think we run 2 mobs, so we run our cows separate from our young stock because of the bull issue. And there are people that actually inject their cows, like inject their young stock to make them abort, but I'm not really a big fan of that, because I don't, unless we have to do that, it seems wrong, to be honest. So so unless it's by accident, and that always happens. We had a couple of young heifers calved this year, but luckily they were fine. But so yeah, the bull is an issue. It's either a bull pen or a bull paddock or something. Yeah, and we don't have the expertise to be able to AI like David does. So yeah, and we've got 100% with our bull. So yeah, so and then in terms of bringing everything together, that will the cows and the sheep. The cows, calves, and sheep generally together, and then our young stock tends to be somewhere else, like a little way away from the bull, basically. Just keep them separate.
And there's a question in terms of your wintering system. So what do you do with the sheep? I think, well, they're linked in terms of, I think the question comes with sheep, you tend to not have tall grass. So how do you get to build up your tall grass system?
That's rest periods, basically. So
okay.
Yeah, in terms of keeping an eye on how long, the longer rest periods and the quicker moving, they don't get on top of it so much. The outwintering, so our cows are still out, so that's interesting that David said, you know, every week less that they're in is saved money. So, and that's you know, this is quite unusual for us to, because we're quite a small farm, and it's heavy clay, and if it's wet, then you know we're going to be making a mess, and it's not gonna, it's just a nightmare. But at the moment, this weather is actually a godsend for us, and long may it continue. But I know that doesn't help. You know, we are having to feed some hay to our sheep, but that was literally only this week. And I think we started feeding our cows last week. We started feeding them hay, so they've done really well. They're full, they're happy. I think we will end up housing just before Christmas because we can, and then that gives us the longer rest periods for the rest of the farm, because like you guys say that we're not able to rest through the winter because of the sheep. I know that I was at an NSA meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they actually brought their sheep into a polytunnel for 2 months and then put them back out to lamb, and that's an option. But our sheds are busy earning money in different ways right now, so it pays to have different things in sheds than sheep, unfortunately. So it's just getting enough residue over from the year before and not nibbling it all down over the winter, leaving that bigger leaf on to get going in the spring. So it's just keeping an eye on things. And I didn't put the picture on, but I can probably, I don't know whether I can share the screen. We were really surprised at our clover regrowth. So if I can just quickly share the screen to show you.
Yeah, just on that, and Fergus, when you went to see Gabe Brown, I didn't go and see him when he was over here. One of the comments that I've had secondhand from those meetings is he tends to say we've got too many legumes. Did he say that in that meeting, or is that just?
Who says that? Sorry, Liz.
Gabe Brown.
We've got too many legumes in our grass.
Yeah.
Wonder why? What?
It could be that's the second. I've heard it secondhand, so I don't know. But I was just curious. Anyway, sorry, Emily. That's all right.
Do Emily to finish before I answer. But...
Oh yeah, no, just quickly. This is the 1st of November. We'd been back. We'd been to Zimbabwe, and we'd come back because it was still very dry when we left. And this is the regrowth after, I think, 2-3 weeks rest. And that's the clover on the 1st of November. So we were very, very happy with that. Because I agree with you guys. I think the clover is essential for our systems. We wouldn't be able to that than anything if we didn't have that in our this is permanent pasture. This has just come naturally, and I would like more diversity in our permanent pasture, to be honest. But it's just how to get that in, and maybe that's with the residual seed bag, like you said, with rest periods. We've got more red clover, like crimson clover coming through now, which is quite exciting. We haven't seen before because of the sheep nibbling it all down. So that is something we have seen in less than 2 years. Anyway, I'll stop.
And I suppose the question, because part of today was about sort of dealing with the dry. So is it the, I suppose it's difficult to, is it the very strict rotation or rest periods, which that you can't separate one from the other in this system? But June, we didn't have tall grass, did we? We couldn't get to tall grass for summer this year, but you still maintain those rest periods.
Rest periods, I think, one thing you do is we didn't overgraze before the drought. I mean, never overgraze any stage. I don't know, May. I mean, you get away with it in May, end of April, whatever. But once we're used now to not to having this sort of weather. So we've either got long grass, which is, you know, a hay crop or a silage crop, gone to seed. That's really key with the clover in it, and then you trample that. Or if you get to the stage, you can't really plan any of this, can you, David? Think every you try and rotate around the farm. That what we call the reseeding moment on a bit of ground. If you've got a bit of ground that's suffered, like David showed you earlier, I would imagine next year David will probably remember that. It'll probably look a bit thin. You'll probably let it go to seed, and I'm guessing you'll put some hay on it and graze it. Is that right? Yeah. And that will become and you remember these sort of things. So and at some point, and it's a sort of things just happen. And then but you will also get short grass at certain times, like at the beginning of the drought, but you don't overgraze that. But that's treated differently to long grass. There's no chart, there's no nothing that can tell you how to do this. You just got to do it and understand it. The information's there from far wiser people than me and David, people like Greg Judy. I don't know about Gabriel, and it's a very different sort of system. Allan Williams. I mean,
Allan Williams, what we took away from the groundswell meeting, he said, do not do the same thing to the same piece of paddock at the same time every year. Try and alter it, even if you're just altering the fence lines where you graze. You know, just try and do everything different every time. It's just nature, basically. Because you think about these bison moving across North America, they wouldn't have followed the same track. It depends how many wolves were in that gully or how over there, how dry it was. And that's the thing that we're learning, is diversity. And it comes by not following strict patterns.
I think the chance
what we've been learned.
Back to Nick's point though, Gina, that very, I was going to use the word organic, I don't mean like fluid decision making, isn't it? That's the reality, is it's like a constant sort of observing, changing things, seeing what's going on. Then that a part of the challenge, which is Nick's question, which is that's really difficult to get people to give. That's June, there's faith in that, isn't there? There's trust, I think there's confidence, there's all of that stuff that's really difficult.
But I think this is where Fergus, with the mentoring side, that it's that someone to phone to say, do you think I should risk this? Maybe we need to develop a phone helpline, Liz, and get not us to staff it.
Exactly how we've gone down this journey. We talk nearly every day, and to be honest, Fergus will be doing something completely opposite to what I'm doing. But every day this happens, isn't it? You've housed it, I've not.
I know. But it's interesting the mentoring, because I'm not going to mention names, but I go to different people and I know where it's going to work and I know where it's not going to work.
Exactly.
And the trouble is that there are people out there who are looking for more diversity. They want flower, what do you call wild flower meadows and what have you. And I mean, we've got a small, you just got to get your head around it. We've got, 1 acre and 1 animal. It's a very different you know, we've got to look after every single, you know, every single acre and get as much out of it, and you get to know your farm very, very well. You know, I was looking at molehills this morning. I think, bloody hell, we got, you know, it's freezing cold. We've got molehills and worms in them this morning. I'm thinking, well, never in a month of Sundays would I've seen that in when the dairy cows are running around there, and, you know. So,
and I think it comes back to, just briefly, I'm back to Nicole, and I know Fergus, you weren't at that, but in terms of that, it was the biological barbecue idea, wasn't it? Which is this support network, which you've got to find to your people.
Yeah.
And doing and they're the people you ring, isn't it? Or send them a WhatsApp message or whatever to say, what the hell's going on here? And I suppose it's quite there's a vulnerability within that, but that's where the trust comes within people, doesn't it? I suppose, and people's ability to want to experiment and try different things.
But because they've been doing it for you're so ahead of the curve, you two, who else apart from each other in this country did you talk to?
No one.
well,
YouTube.
I mean,
YouTube.
That book was, I mean, and we're both very fortunate, and it needs to be made quite clear that, I mean, I make the decisions on my farm. I'm quite lucky. I mean, the family are interested, but not overly. So I haven't got to go back and discuss with business partners. My children are on board completely. Carolyn's on board. She doesn't care about it. And so we do quite drastic things, and you have to be brave. You have to believe in it. But we found, I mean, neither of us are good on tech, but we found the information online, and it was a lot of research. And we got the car and drove down to Bristol University and went up to Warwickshire University. We went groundswell from day one. So you can do it. You know, we went and saw Joel Williams, and that was an eye-opener in Elaine Ingham's student. And back in 2015, you just got to want to do it. You've got to want to do it, and the information is out there. I mean, Greg Judy's putting YouTube on all the time and showing quite mad things that some people. The thing is, maybe it's, I don't know. I think it makes economic sense. I mean, I can't think of David's very profitable. I don't know how you can make more money off an acre of land.
But do you not think you two need to do YouTube clips now? Because I think part of the challenges that and I suppose Carbon Calling is trying to, which is that sort of UK based doing, we still bring in a headliner to get people to come, but we're very wanting to get UK practitioners represented, because at the moment all the YouTube clips are based in America, Canada, different places that aren't us.
I think, Liz, we should buy them some proper microphones and make them into superstars.
Can you hear? Have you heard it or not?
Yeah, just a bit muffled, but you're fine. We just have to concentrate. Okay, we're going to make you into superstars. We haven't even done that to us. Well, maybe we have.
Well, no,
maybe we have.
We could do it. We could do. I mean, I've done. I take loads and loads and loads of photographs. I've got loads of videos. I photograph every day. You know, but I mean, I'm not. I've given a lot of my time to a lot of people for nothing, and I'm very good. I don't mind doing it. You know, I mean, we've mentored people down here and got people stuck. Sam, Penny Vaughan, Fidelity. You know, they've only done it because of David and myself, and I think they think. Yeah. And I'm not going to do a Tom Penn thing. I'm a little bit suspicious of YouTube. Once it started making mega bucks, then they've got to start making things up. Is what I think, to keep the interest up. That's why.
You could be. You just need to turn yourself into an influencer. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. We'll come back to you with a plan.
Okay. Anyway, I hope I haven't confused you all.
Yeah, and Emily's also put in the Q&A in terms of if anybody's there's a mob grazing WhatsApp group as well, which is also an interesting place for
should have mentioned
that.
Should have mentioned that.
That's right. Yeah.
That's very. I mean, sorry to interrupt you, Liz. That was on my list of people who've influenced us, and you know, there's some great people. I mean, I went and visited Nicky Yorksall up in Aberdeen. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Robert. I looked after Robert's animals when his brother got married, you know.
And he started the group. They started it.
Yeah.
Okay, last last couple of questions. Does anybody know whether waders like curlew or lapwing cope with these systems well?
Waders or lapwing?
Well,
I'm sure you have many waders in Kent, but you never know.
we get lapwings. Do you know what? I don't know, but I've noticed since I started, I know a lot more about. I thought someone might ask that. I'm recognising and learning more about birds, and I will put that on my list of things I don't know is the answer. But the wildlife situation, I mean,
Yeah, it's unbelievable, really.
the creatures that join you when you move the animal, especially if you're doing it at midnight under headlights, it's quite interesting doing it at night in the summer.
Now, I've got
I
to
don't
move.
want to know why you're doing it at midnight. Anyway, and I suppose the question, Emily, of adding to you, which is that younger generation. I suppose it links back to I'm picking on your partner's sons, but in terms of, do you think there is and I suppose mob grazing group and all that, do you think younger generation are interested, or it's just something that you sort of progress into, or are you getting visits from a range of people on your farm?
Range of people, actually. I think as one son is looking on at what we're doing, I think he does see the benefits of it, especially with the strip grazing of the herbal lay. Like that's clear to see, because it's just so much production in it. So I think it's some. It's where you are in your. I think in your. It's all about. It all goes back to your holistic context of what you're. Are you happy with, not being the market topper or not doing this? Not that It's a bit of a process in your life, really, where have you become comfortable enough to embrace low input systems for higher profit? Like, I think it's a process. I think, yeah. But and in response to sorry, Mark, I was just replying to you on text. When sort of May, June, July, they're pretty much all together. Everything's together, the cows and the sheep, and then depending on like what the stage of is in breeding, like tupping time or bulling or calving, then they separate. But in the heavy growing season, we mob everything together and then we move them quicker. And I think there's an interesting, sorry to drag on a bit, but there's something called Sabbath grazing. Has anyone heard of that? It's basically so for our system, we actually are like the sheep. Obviously the sheep like the shorter stuff, so we kind of maybe go down to beer can grazing like height, so before it lignifies, and so if you keep on moving them back to create that level, then some fields ahead of you in the rotation will get longer, as and so whether you shut that up for deferred grazing or you rest that for a whole year, that's the whole idea of a Sabbath grazing. One field each year will be rested for the whole year, and then you start again, and then so that's kind of hopefully where we will get to. And then like David and Fergus was saying, you're rotationally resting one field for a whole year in your system, and then like by managing the growing season better, like by getting around those fields quicker, even if you have like seven parcels, for instance, and then you never get to the seventh one, that won't be grazed for the whole year. Or if you only get to the fifth one and have to go back to the first one, then maybe you can cut hay on the sixth paddock, and so you've got your hay stock on that sixth paddock. You've got the seven paddock that you're resting for the whole year, and then you're still going back to first, and then you move everything round one. So that's the idea with this Sabbath grazing thing, which I think is really interesting, because it keeps that the pasture level right for the sheep to fatten, and that's where we're heading to. I think we just need more infrastructure to allow that. But yeah, So that's quite interesting. It's on. There's quite a lot on the internet about it. So yeah.
Perfect. I'm just conscious of time. So one last, David was about to make a point, and then we've got to finish really.
Yeah, on that note, we did something rather crazy last year. We were asked to give advice on a guy who bought some land, and it had been overgrazed, and we said, well, give it the summer off. And then he said, well, what do I do it then? And we said, well, bring 200 cattle on, move them through. And then we thought, so we've got the cattle, we'll bring them round. So in August, we took all our animals off our farm, moved them onto this unit for 90 days. We didn't tell them, I don't know if Christine's on the line now, we didn't tell them why we did it. We did it on the, we're going to improve your ground, which what we did, but we also gave our whole farms, the whole farm got an extra 90 days rest. And believe you me, that's paid dividends this year.
This year,
yeah,
we call it I mean, that wasn't a cop out or anything like that. It was just, it's taking it up another level.
yeah.
And just very interestingly, is it Ian Mitchell in this one?
Ian Mitchell is.
And what he says is, if you've got too much land, not enough stock, you don't spread them out over the land. He divides the farm into two and concentrates on the most productive part, lets the other part rest. It's a similar sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then concentrates on that. Don't concentrate on the weaker, poorer ground. It's counterintuitive, hard to get your head around, but you're going to get more response from your best ground than your worst. And if you're trying to get production, the poorer ground will then follow on behind. Everything will improve, but the better ground will improve quicker. It's impossible. You get it took me years to work that out.
We've always found this. Why isn't that ground getting better than this ground? And yet the best ground gets better quicker. And it's not what we were taught, is it? You reseed the worst ground, that's what you did. But it's not, you keep your animals on the best ground, and that ground will produce far more than the worst ground will.
And resting it and then mobbing it the next year. Complicated, isn't it?
My brain's not just taking it in anymore. It has to be said.
Yeah, sorry.
I might need to. No, it's fine. It's all good. We might need to get you back for a special session. That's all. When Nick set up your phone line and anybody can give you a ring when you're moving your cattle at midnight on a summer's evening, you'll be
I'm going to
fine.
move them now.
Okay. Right.
No.
Calm. I've got to finish. Thank you very much, Fergus, David, Emily. We've done a range of chat this evening. But just I think I suppose Nick, what's your main take home from this evening?
My main take home is two things that Emily said she learned more in Scotland than in Portugal and Zimbabwe. And the other thing is that I want to invite David and Fergus here to come and give me and Reno some.
More importantly, you two could go and see them. It's a long
No, but
way.
I want to get them here to show us like where we're going wrong. But
no, I was desperately keen to come to Carbon Crawley, but you're a long way away. But I will be doing it next year. You know, it's too close to groundswell.
I will. We're
moving it to September. We're spacing it out a bit.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I've got family in Scotland, so we could put that in.
Yeah, but it's the weaning side, and I would like to talk to them about the money side, and I think we're going to milk these 2 layers. They're going to be marvelous.
It's not complicated. It's not complicated.
Two simpletons like us.
It's not complicated. It's a series of. It's continually evolving, and it's experience and believing in. Andre Poisson, read the book. It's all in that. You know, he talks about illiterate farmers in Normandy.
He also talks about assembly line workers, not giving them enough time off. The productivity goes down. He compares that with grass plants.
Yeah.
On that note, people want a picture of your bookcase, Emily, by the way, if you want to put it on Instagram. Thanks. Right. The bit I've taken away is I quite like the idea of being joined by many creatures when you move the fence, and so yeah, and just that. But I think in that support, the importance of support network and reading stuff and having that and someone to bounce ideas off, and how important that is. So yeah, it's find your people, definitely. So on that note, thank you everybody for joining. We've had a good range of questions, and sorry, yeah, I should have said congratulations to Fergus's news about being now a grandfather, and also Emily's engagement. We've had a lot to celebrate this evening, and we've completely ignored it. So I do apologise for that. Also, if anybody is a Rosa member, I forgot to tell you, if you want to tell me your number or email me your number, I can get you registered for points for this evening. I should have said that earlier. But yes, thank you very much. We will be back in January. But again, thanks, David, Fergus, and Emily, and we'll see you all soon. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.